Welcome to my channel, Atino Gola the Lawyer, Karibuni Sana, and today in this video we are going to be talking about election offenses. Now, election offenses are some of the, let me say, acts or omissions that occur in relation to elections. And as we know, we're in the political season, we're gearing up for the August 9th elections here in Kenya, and it's important for candidates to know the various election offenses under the Elections Act of 2016. So I'd like to inform us about the same. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe. So as I've said, today we are talking about election offenses. Now I'd like to state, even as I talk about this area, that I'm practicing right now in election law, and I also have a team of election law practitioners or advocates and also consultants. I've had the privilege of also practicing in the courts this year, election law. For example, before the ODM tribunal, I was handling a matter there, and I also handled a matter before the IBC, Dispute Resolution Committee. Thank God in both matters they sailed through successfully. And I was also the secretary of the National Appeals Tribunal of a certain party. So throughout the year, up to this point, and even before, I've had a keen interest in election law, and I've been able to do a few studies here and there. And I'm going to share some of the election offenses, in my opinion, that I think aspirants and candidates should focus on as we gear up for the elections. Now, we are aware that the time this video is going to be coming up, it will be less than 30 days to the elections. Now, it is during this time that some of these offenses will be committed, and it's important to note that once these offenses are committed, this can be grounds of challenging the win of a certain candidate. Okay, and even yourself, you can fail actually to sail through because of some of these offenses that you commit. So just as a caution, I encourage all candidates to be aware of some of these laws. Now, also it's important to understand that the nature of politics in Kenya is very competitive, and people will use various means to win elections. So election petitions are also a means of winning elections in Kenya. And considering the stakes in this year's elections, of course, as advocates practicing in election law, we expect quite a number of petitions, but now the challenge comes in when there is insufficient evidence. So between now and the August 9th elections, it's important for candidates to be able to collect evidence that would be helpful to be able to challenge the win, or to be able to actually support a candidate who won. And we know, of course, in an adversarial court process like Kenya, evidence is key. So we hope that you're able to take note of that. Before I just state the election offenses, I'd just like to state the part of some ruling, or rather the judgment that was given in the Raila 2013 case, Raila Amolo versus IBC and 3 others, where the Supreme Court stated that the burden of proof is always on the petitioner, and where a party alleges non-conformity with the electoral law, the petitioner must not only prove that there was non-compliance with the law, but such failure of compliance actually affected the validity of the elections. So even as we try to gather evidence, as we try to prepare for any eventuality regarding election petitions, we should be able to ensure that this evidence, even if it shows there's non-conformity with the law, for example, non-conformity with the Election Offences Act, then such non-conformity actually led to or affected the validity of the elections. So I'm just going to go through some of the major offenses that you should take note of, and I'll encourage some of the candidates or even the legal team, of course they are much aware, they should actually advise their candidates to watch out for these offenses. So the first one is offenses relating to voting. And these offenses relating to voting are actually the ones that agents who are not going to be the representatives of the candidates in the various polling stations should take note of, because these ones happen on the voting day itself mostly. And you see, you know that elections are won at the polling station, because the real counting and tallying of results happens at the polling station. So what are some of the offenses relating to voting? For example, someone without authority is applying the ballot paper, destroying the ballot paper, or being in possession of the ballot paper unlawfully. We can also see also the issue to do with someone voting more than once, voting when you're not entitled to vote. Also, we have the issue to do with the manufacture and the creation of the ballot paper. And if someone prints it and is not allowed to do so by the electoral body, those are some of the offenses relating to voting which agents should actually take note of. That's provided for under Section 5 of the Elections Offences Act. Then the next election offense, of course, that happens most of the time, or some of the time, let me say, it is bribery. Bribery is provided for under Section 9 of the Election Offences Act, and we are seeing the penalty actually for bribery is 2 million shillings or imprisonment for 6 years. Actually, even I forgot to mention also the penalty for the offense relating to voting. We are seeing it's 1 million or imprisonment for not a period exceeding 6 years. So we are seeing, of course, even the penalties relating to these offenses are quite large, so we should ensure as candidates we are compliant with the law. Now, bribery is being defined as a person who tries to directly or indirectly influence a voter, or bribe to influence a voter, or even the voter to refrain from voting for a particular candidate, and or a political party. So you see, bribery can be either in terms of someone asking you to do something or asking you not to do something. And as you said, the offense is punishable with a fine of 2 million and imprisonment for a term of 6 years or both. Then Section 10 talks about undue influence. Undue influence, of course, where you threaten to use force, violence, including sexual violence, and we know many women are actually, many women aspirants or candidates sometimes could be victims of this. So when a person through another person or his behalf threatens to use force, including violence, restraint, or material, or physical, or spiritual injury. Now, the issue of spiritual injury, I don't know, maybe those who use spiritual forces to be able to win elections will tell us, but it's hard to prove actually that someone used spiritual injury, maybe unless they were seen visiting those spiritual forces to be able to influence. So if someone uses all those means to induce or compel a person to vote or not to vote for a particular person, it can be termed as undue influence. And also, of course, there is the penalty. You'll see under the Act that the general penalty for all offenses provided is 1 million or an imprisonment of 3 years or both of the penalties. Now, Section 11 talks about use of force or violence during election period. Now, of course, we are all preaching peace as we head towards the August 9th election, and we should ensure that we avoid any instances of violence during the election. So if a person directly or indirectly, in person or through another person, inflicts or threatens to inflict injury, damage, harm, or loss against another person, that can be termed to be use of force and violence. And this offense, the penalty is 2 million and imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 years or both. So let us really watch out, especially let us talk to our supporters to try and conduct themselves in a manner that does not depict itself as the use of force or violence, or even on the election day. Actually, this is also something else. On the election day, certain supporters of a certain candidate or party are seen to be using force or violence. It can be a ground to be able to say the elections were not held in the manner that is prescribed under the Constitution. Now, Section 12 talks about the use of national security organs to be able to induce or compel a person to support a particular candidate or a political party. So if you're using state security organs to do so, the penalty is quite hefty for this. It's a fine not exceeding 10 million shillings or a term not or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 years. So you should not use the national security organs to be able to induce or compel any person to support a certain candidate or political party. Then now Section 13 also, these are the offences relating to elections, which are also the same as almost the same as some of the offences relating to voting. And also these offences should be known by some of the agents. So if this information can be disseminated in a way that some of our agents are able to understand, then it could be very helpful. You see, there's the issue of forging, defacing or destroying any nomination paper, or even publishing any statement, any false statement about any candidate. There are quite a number. You will see them under the Act, under Section 13, and the offence for this is a fine of 500,000 shillings or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. So these offences relating to elections and voting are very key, because some of these offences will actually happen on the voting day itself, but some of the offences even you're talking about are the ones to also be taken into keen interest from the time the campaign started, or rather during the last days of the campaign as we head towards the general election. Then if we look at Section 14 of the Election Offences Act, we're talking about the use of public resources for campaigning. Now, some of the incumbent, or let me say, it is upon maybe someone who's challenging an incumbent candidate to be able to prove that that incumbent candidate used public resources for campaigning. And you're seeing that the fine for this is a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 6 years or both. Then Section 17 relates to offences relating to the use of technology in elections. Now this is very sensitive, and now as election law lawyers who are practicing in this area, it's important to be able to understand what are these offences relating to technology and how do they affect the validity of the elections, because this was a very keen area of interest in the Raila 2017 case. And of course there was this phrase that was coined, the vifaranga via computer. So this time we know the electoral register will be the digital one. So it's important to understand as a practitioner what are some of the offences. And if I could just state a few, we are seeing stealing or damaging electronic equipment, altering a computer program or a computer system or network, accessing the computer system without authorization. Those are some of the electoral offences that will happen, that are bound to happen rather, and we should be able to know how they affect the validity of the elections, and that is provided for under Section 17. Now, Section 20 talks about the breach of electoral code of conduct. Now, all candidates, when they were, of course, doing their compliances with the party the political party and the IBC signed the Electoral Code of Conduct. So there's also an offense when you breach that Electoral Code of Conduct, and the fine is 1 million shillings or a term not exceeding 6 years or both. So we should be very keen to ensure that we abide by the code of conduct that was signed. And now I'll just talk about the general penalty, which I earlier stated in the video, that for offences which are provided for within the Elections Act, the general penalty is 1 million shillings or a term not exceeding 5 years or both. Now, I'd invite the candidates to have a keen look at the Elections Offences Act. I have not stated all of them in detail because then you would have a very long lecture, but some of these offences could be carried out by yourself or by your opponent, and this could be sufficient grounds for challenging the validity of an election. So I hope you found this information useful. If you enjoyed the video, like, share and subscribe.